The story of music icon Bruce Springsteen is given a new dimension in a biopic about the period in the early 80s when Bruce was on his way to superstardom as he recorded his Born in the USA album, but that journey took an introspective detour that resulted in his most important and personally significant album, Nebraska. Director Scott Cooper and actor Jeremy Allen White, with the support of the boss himself, took on the challenge of showing the darkest parts of one of music's brightest stars in the musical drama Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere.
It's a 305 V8.
Never owned a new car before.
Yeah, it's awfully fitting for a handsome devil rock star. I do know who you are.
Well, that makes one of us.
Scott Cooper, director of the Oscar-winning film Crazy Heart with Jeff Bridges, and Black Mass with Johnny Depp, wrote and directed Deliver Me From Nowhere, which was adapted from the book of the same name by author Warren Zanes. The added input and endorsement from Bruce Springsteen himself when it came to making the film gave both Scott and actor Jeremy Allen White, who plays the role of Bruce, an added clarity and understanding of the story they were telling, but also enough independence to tell it in creatively the best way they could.
Judita De Silva, Arise Play, Nigeria. Now, when it comes to making musical biopics, there's almost a pre-existing expectation from the audience that it's going to be a melodramatic depiction of the agony and ecstasy of the private life of a public star. But this film stays really planted in realism. So I just wondered that as a director, you have a creative mind, and you know the subject matter is Bruce Springsteen and his personal and professional and mental health struggles. How hard was it to toe that line of stylized realism throughout the film?
It wasn't hard at all. If you're making a film about Bruce Springsteen, America's most authentic artist, you have to make the film incredibly authentically. And I said to Bruce that I'm going to make the film in the same way that you made Nebraska, which is to say minimalist, stark, no gloss, no spectacle, very few stadium or crowd performances, interaction with the crowd, but really about a man who is facing a reckoning with himself in the most painful chapter of his life, the most enduring record, I think his best record. But it took a great deal of excavation on Bruce's part to reach down deep where it hurts the most to give us this gift. That was my guiding principle, and I thought would separate it from all other glossy spectacle music films.
Hey boss, can you do a mic check?
How's that sound?
Looks about right.
Don't need to be perfect. I want it to feel like I'm in the room by myself.
Yeah.
Let's try one.
Here's what I want you to understand. This is not about either one of us. This is not about the charts.
Golden Globe winning and also Emmy Award winning actor Jeremy Allen White, star of the hit series The Bear, embraced what was a quite intimidating challenge of not only playing Bruce Springsteen, but learning to play guitar like him and sing his songs, even having to perform live in front of Bruce in the early stages of the production. And beyond the technical challenges for Jeremy were also the artistic ones when it came to delving into the story that revolves around the writing and recording of Nebraska, which Bruce regards as the most important album of his entire career, because the personal, poetic, and painful body of work had the traumatic inspiration behind it of his difficult childhood with his father.
Watching your performance in this film, I could see you moving the line between intense but not obnoxious and troubled but not dark. So when you were initially given the challenge of becoming Bruce Springsteen. And Bruce has this enigmatic quality that's hard to define and almost intangible. What did you have to really grab onto so that you could capture the essence of the man in order to become the character of the man in the film?
Yeah, I mean, I think in spending time, a little bit of time with Bruce and learning, as much as I could about Bruce in his younger years and kind of around the time that I was portraying him, um, I understood the sort of obsession and intensity that he harnessed and that was necessary for his kind of artistry. But I also, I guess I also saw like a through line of real gentleness with the world around him, a tremendous amount of kind of empathy and understanding, and I think that's one of the most compelling things about his music is there's no judgment in his music. It's only really understanding. I think as a listener, you feel very um, seen and witnessed, and so it was important to me to obviously, show the sort of drive that is such a big part of Bruce's life and continues to be. But I also feel that I had to, um, I don't know, find that sort of like delicate gentleness that he has, with the people in his life, with the world around him. I think any pain or traumas that Bruce has felt, they've been internalized. He's always hardest on himself. It's very rare that affects the people, I think, around him.
Actor Jeremy Strong, star of the popular series Succession, which earned him an Emmy Award for his performance as Kendall Roy, plays the role of Bruce Springsteen's dedicated and longtime manager, John Landau, with a friendship and working relationship that has spanned decades, capturing the essence of John as a music executive with the kind of patience and purity that hardly exists in the industry, was a significant part of Jeremy's performance, because John was pivotal in helping to shape the working environment that made the production of Nebraska possible for Bruce.
When you play the role of John Landau in this film, you play it in such a way that he feels almost like a father figure to Bruce, even though he never presumes to assume that position in his life. But the way he fights for him and protects him, it really cuts through. So I was curious was that something you integrated through your own interpretation of the character, or was that reflective of and echo the reality of their relationship in real life?
I think the latter. For me, I feel that my task when doing something like this, where you're portraying and representing someone who's real, is to study them endlessly, observe them, interrogate them, surround them as much as possible in terms of your understanding and research, and then base everything that you do on the way that they are. So my hope is that everything you see in the film is John. He is that steady, he is that measured, he talks that way, he moves that way, he is devoted to Bruce that way. His understanding of Bruce, his understanding of music, and just his the kind of deep connection that they have, and John's ability to create a container for him. John was only a few years older than Bruce, but in a sense, he was a kind of father figure in the early and mid 70s when he first came into Bruce's life, in terms of acculturating him, introducing him to a lot of influences, literature, film, art history, but also therapy. John was in therapy. John understood that his friend had the weight of an unreconciled past of trauma and wounds that at a certain point in 1982, when this film takes place, that his friend was going to have to confront and heal. So he really transcends the role of manager, producer, and I don't know what you call a John Landau.
This is about Bruce Springsteen. And these are the songs that he wants to work on right now.
I saw her standing on her front lawn, just a twirling her baton.
I'm gonna tell you a little story. When Bruce was little, he had a hole in the floor of his bedroom.
Me and her for rides.
The floor that's supposed to be solid, that you're supposed to be able to stand on. Bruce, he didn't have that.
But even bouncing off that, just watching the film and what you did, it just feels like in this period of, like they say that in show business, the artist is the show, the manager is the business. But in this dark time in Bruce's life, John feels like the glimmer of light in all of it. But as an actor, did you find it hard or easy to always calibrate just right, because your performance has to function within the context of the film, which is an exploration of the state of mind of Bruce Springsteen?
That's a great question. In a sense, I don't know that I think the way I think about it is my job is to prepare the whole life. My job is to become, as much as I can, John Landau. 360 degrees, fully dimensionally, not to become John Landau for these particular scenes in a script, but to have enough of a visceral understanding of John Landau to be able to walk onto that set and respond and go through anything that you could put in front of me. And part of that is to, as you say, be incredibly sensitized and attuned to whatever is happening with Bruce, because that is his, what you said about the kind of the music business, John, I think the reason that he is who he is for Bruce is that his priorities are always going to be in the ability of the artist to fully express a private vision. Wherever that goes, it's not about the charts and about, winning Grammys. And Bruce once said that the pressures of the music business are powerless in the face of what is real. And I think, and there's a line in the movie where we talk about finding something real in all the noise. And it's why I think this movie is very relevant for us today in a time where we're surrounded with so much noise. And Bruce remains someone who speaks the truth, stands for that, and stands for light and love and hope and unity in a kind of very dark time. So all of those things really filled me up. And, I'm also someone who tries very hard to tune out the noise and fight for what is real. And so, that this journey has really been an uplifting one for me and incredibly nourishing to spend time in their orbit.
In many a tale of a man's rise to stardom, it comes accompanied by the inevitable stories of the women he loved and lost along the way. And in Bruce Springsteen's case, one of those women was Faye, played by actress Odessa Young. But unlike most of the stories of ill-fated relationships, Faye is a character with significance to Bruce, but also independence for herself. And that makes their love story a little different, because it unfolds in such a way that while it feels familiar, it doesn't feel typical.
Now, when it comes to the presentation of women on screen, it always comes laden with preconceptions, particularly when it comes to music biopics and one like this in the world of rock. So she's either the groupie, or she's the wife who's left behind or left with the children, or the small town girl that knew the rock star when they were younger. But with your character, I thought it was just so wonderful to have this woman who already is not a cookie cutter. She has a world of her own and happens to bisect with Bruce Springsteen, but it's not in a kind of form of adoration. It's more as a catalyst for change in his life. Was it important when you were playing her that you show her as an entity onto herself that happens to symbioze with Bruce Springsteen at this point in his life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think with anything, with any character, it's kind of utmost importance to me that they feel like whole people, regardless of how much the story shows of them. And I had a great amount of faith in Scott to be able to kind of allow that character to breathe and to feel very authentic, because he wrote a great deal of detail into the script as well. And that's kind of where I started with it. But I think what was the most important thing to me about their relationship was that it is not about, the relationship is not necessarily a fan and a rock star. It is two people.
Yeah.
I think that he, in this time in his life, and Bruce has been saying himself, you know, at this time, he knew what to do with himself for 3 hours of every 24 hours because he was playing on stage. So for those 3 hours, he knew who he was. And then the rest of the 21 hours, he was lost. And I think that Faye sees who he can be in those 21 hours as a person, not as a superstar, not as a celebrity, but she sees who he can be as a person. And I really love how their relationship kind of feels so normal and feels so grounded, and actually doesn't feel, the reason that they don't work is not because he's famous. The reason that they don't work is because he needs to deal with a lot of stuff before he is ready to give himself to a romantic relationship.
And were you mindful throughout your performance that you never accidentally stumbled into being the motherly figure or the nurturer, that really it was this full-bodied relationship that happened to get to a point that it couldn't carry on?
I mean, I think she is a mother, and that's an inextricable part of her identity. She has a child, and her child, I've heard, because I am not a mother myself, but having children really changes your perspective, and it changes your relationship with yourself, and it changes your priorities. And I think that that is still an inextricable part of her as she is in this film. Because she knows how to nurture, and she knows how to caretake, but she's not going to do it for nothing. She's not going to do it for somebody who is not going to take that in the best way possible. And I think that that's ultimately what that conversation is about, is like, her line, "I'm not here to play house." She's not just doing it because she feels like that's what she should be doing. She's being generous with him because she sees how it could be. And they're just really times in their life. Yeah.
But brilliant performance, and I did think it was such a touching way to show it. So bravo on your performance, and thank you for talking with us.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
Bruce is a repairman. And what he's doing with this album is he's repairing that hole in his floor.
The assembly of actors in Deliver Me From Nowhere play key parts in painting a full picture of Bruce Springsteen's world at the time, both inwardly and outwardly, while Jeremy Allen White had to contend with depicting the difficult and problematic but also deeply personal parts of the life of a well-respected star. Scott Cooper rounded out this portrait by showing the catalyst behind it all. Douglas Springsteen, Bruce's father, played movingly by Emmy Award-winning actor and screenwriter Stephen Graham. This provided a necessary dimension to the film that gives context to the man it is about and why he made one of his most enduring albums.
One thing I really wanted to ask about was the work you did with Stephen Graham, because in your depiction of this dysfunctional father, you managed to humanize him just enough so that it cuts through and you don't end up with this archetypal villain. So we as an audience have a situation where while there is reproach for the actions of this man, there isn't outright condemnation for this man holistically. So how hard was it for you to strike that balance so that it had that effect on the audience?
Well, I'm thankful that you noticed that. Anytime you're directing Stephen Graham, count yourself lucky. He's one of the finest actors working. When I was creating Douglas Dutch Springsteen, I said the same thing to Bruce that you've said. This man isn't a villain. I know from our discussions, Bruce, that your father was, of course, cold and detached, but he was also suffering undiagnosed mental health battle with schizophrenia. How much of that is responsible for his behavior and alcoholism, I don't think anyone will ever know. But I wanted him to come across as three-dimensional, a man who wanted to connect with his son, but couldn't. A man who wanted to love his son, but couldn't show it. A man who is leading a life of quiet despair. And I think Stephen Graham did that beautifully. And why do I think so? Because when he would come on screen, when I was directing it, Bruce Springsteen would excuse himself. Or John Landau, who knew Doug Springsteen very well, would well up with tears and say to himself, "My God, that's Douglas," without anyone even hearing him. I think Stephen's performance is as fine as anything I've seen in a long time because it's rooted in reality and truth and very painful honesty.
He's repairing that hole in himself. And once he's done that, he's going to repair the entire world.
Trying to find something real in all the noise.
You always do.
And just going off from that, like the period of the film, the period of Bruce's life and career that the film focuses on, it doesn't always paint him in the best light because of what he's going through. So was it difficult to really find the right pitch? Because at the end of the day, you want to show truth, but at the same time, you would have to have an awareness that you don't want to alienate the audience because you paint a less than favorable portrait of a man you know they like so much.
Yeah, I don't know if I thought about it that way. I mean, I think I empathize so much with what Bruce was sort of going through in this period of his life, and watching the film and seeing the way that he treated, for example, like Faye, in moments that was unsettling and something that I would hope that I wouldn't treat people that way, and that's not a nice thing to see. But in the moment, it made sense. I mean, I guess I understood that Bruce was just kind of not throwing his hands up, but I think he was just very lost. And there's collateral damages, but there was no intention of cruelty. And so, no, I didn't really think about how people would perceive those moments because I felt like I had an understanding of what he wanted or needed, or at least had an understanding of how lost he was feeling at that time.
Well, congratulations on a brilliant performance. I really enjoyed watching the film, and thanks for talking with us.
Thanks so much. Nice to see you. Appreciate it.